If you remember the previous tutorial, we can go to settings, we can go to writing, and we checked this box that said allow users to switch editors, and we hit save. Big important thing to hit the save button. If we go back to our post that we were editing, instead of using TinyMCS, if we scroll down to the bottom, we get this block that we turned on called editor, and we can change this to block editor. And when we do, so once you do, welcome to Gutenberg. This is the newest update of WordPress, and it's pretty cool. And if you look at it, it also looks vastly different than the last tutorial. So for starters, our title is still there, and we can go ahead and if we click on the title block, you notice that permalink now shows up above the post, and we are able to edit it as we did before. We can come here and we can start writing my words, my way. And if I hit return and keep typing, you notice that now every time that you create a new paragraph, it adds a new block. And in these new blocks, this is where we get our added functionality. We can add new blocks by hitting return, by adding new paragraphs, or if we hover over a block, we get above or below the block a plus. And this is where we're able to see all of the new features that we're able to do in WordPress. So for instance, if I wanted to add an image above my post, I can just click the plus, hit image, and do the same drag and drop that I used to do before, and it will upload it here. Now, if we needed to make it bigger or smaller, again, we can grab the handles and make it bigger or smaller. If we need to write a caption as we did before. If we need to do alt text or word wrap, if we click on it, we notice that we get the same word wrapping features. If we hit the pencil, this is how you would get to the actual gallery so that you can change the caption and proper alt text. So that feature is still here, but it's hidden away after you've uploaded the image, as opposed to before, it would show up with the image. The other thing that you can do, instead of going into this menu where it kind of goes into the old WordPress, what I'd like to point out is the contextual menu now that floats over on the right. Anytime you interact with a block, this block toolbar will show up here. And you notice that the block toolbar will tell you what the piece of content is, the block, and it will give you the options that are available for it. So for instance, when we're doing paragraph stuff, we have our pop-up toolbar that allows you to do bold, italicize, and links like we did before. But also we can do new things like drop cap, that it will drop cap the first letter. We can change the font size if we want it to be bigger or smaller for each individual block. We can also do some color settings now, changing color. And if you're a geek like myself, you can add additional CSS classes if you so fit. But the other thing that we can do is if we go to and click on a different block, such as an image block, you notice that this now changes. It'll tell you what the block is, it's an image, and this is where we can now add our alt text as we did before. So you don't have to go to the pencil icon. I like to just basically keep everything in this interface, and that's really what Gutenberg's trying to keep us doing, is staying here where we're creating as opposed to jumping in and out of different places. We can also do things like change the linking. So for instance, if we want people to click on this and have it go somewhere, we can go to the link settings and change it to the media file. If we have a custom URL, like if we wanted to take it to maybe a pirate website or whatever, or the attachment page where people can download the actual image. So this is all right here now, which is really slick. If I click off of any of the blocks, you notice that it switches over to the document panel. And the document panel is the thing that was always there even in the last version, such as where is it published immediately or future date. We can also say things like stick it on the front page now. So if you have a theme that has hero content, we can leverage that feature now by hitting stick on front page. We can add categories as we did before, or we can just simply check the ones that we want them to show up on, just like we did before. Tags, we can add featured image. We can set a featured image to this post. Let's add our skull and crossbones here. So I showed you that we can click on something, or click on a block and add it through the post or the plus. We can also add a plus up here in the top left. This is always here when we're creating content. We can do a search finally. So for instance, if I needed to do something like, I don't know, a column, I can just start typing And now I can find the exact thing that I'm trying to do. Now, you may want to just kind of click and drag. You notice that it doesn't work. You just click in WordPress for Western and it just drops it in, and we can start using that style as we see fit. Now, the other nice thing about Gutenberg is when you have stuff that's already created, let's say like this keep typing, man, I really wish this was a heading and not a paragraph. Well, all you need to do is convert it. If you're using a block that's a paragraph, if we hover over it, it will now give us this double arrow that allows you to change it, and it's based off of the context of what you originally created. So it's not going to change it to a photo because it's text. Maybe you want to make it a heading or a quote or a list or a verse. We can now just simply convert that block, and it saves you a lot of steps. And when we do, the block menu will change, make it a heading. We can adjust the level of what it is, or maybe the alignment. So working with WordPress for Western now using Gutenberg is a lot more intuitive because we don't have to jump between menus here and there. So if we wanted to change this image, what can it convert to? Let's find out. So we can do things like media and text, or a gallery. So if you wanted to have several photos, or a new thing called a cover photo. This is kind of what we see a lot in more contemporary blogging, where you have an image with maybe a heading going into a new section. So this is kind of a new feature that's really nice if you're trying to use images with text so that you can break up your writing. And again, if we didn't want that, we could always convert the block back to an image, and we don't really lose much of anything. So what else can we do within this new WordPress for Western? Well, we could start searching and finding things, or I can actually show you by clicking on each of the different elements what blocks are now available, such as audio and video. Again, you're still limited to the 50 megabyte, 500 megabyte per site rule, but now we have direct blocks for that type of stuff. Formatting, this is something that's been long asked for. Being able to do some things like adding a table or adding some custom CSS, or maybe you have a verse. We can also do things like a page break or an add more, or even better yet, add a button, because who doesn't like a button? So maybe you have a button that you're trying to say, hey, visit my YouTube or whatever. You can add a button really easily now within the new WordPress for Western. The other thing that I want to point out that this convert button will do is the block will have certain styles. This little style drop down will also show up here if there's nothing else that we can convert something to. So for instance, instead of converting this button to, I don't know, a more buttonier button, don't know, it'll present block style instead. But if you ever want to know if you can modify something like a button or something that can be added text or change colors, be sure to either click the convert button or come over to the block toolbar and expand the styles section. That'll give you some extra stuff that isn't necessarily available for other pieces of content. And again, once we're done, we can simply hit Save Draft. Save Draft is now moved to the top, and it's also a lot more transparent. Anytime that you do stuff and you click off, you'll notice that up here where it says Save Draft, every so often it will auto save, and it will tell you that it is auto saving. Or when we force save it, it will have the cloud icon and saving. We can hit preview just like we did before. We get a new rendering icon of it drawing what our post will look like. And voila, we can now see that stuff, including that cool button right here. I'm gonna go ahead and close the preview, and I'm gonna go ahead and hit publish, and publish will make it publish just like before. Now, if we go over to the cog, if you're not seeing what I'm seeing, if you don't have that panel, the cog will get you this side panel. So the next thing is these three little dots next to the side panel. When we click on this, you'll see that you have some view options. If you're like me, I don't like having the WordPress interface when I'm trying to create. So I might want to do full screen mode so that it uses my full screen's real estate as I'm creating things. If you need to get that back, you can just turn off full screen mode and it'll bring your side panel back from WordPress. We can also see visual or code editor for any of my fellow geeks out there that like to really kind of do things themselves without a WYSIWYG editor. We can also switch back to the classic editor. So if you've made a post or you have a post and you really don't want to use this new interface, you can hit switch to classic editor and it will take you back with the bulk of your content. You will notice if you use this conversion, some things won't work. If you're going to switch editors, commit to that editor. Personally, I would stick with block editor. A couple other things, if you're a writing aficionado, that's nice with the new Gutenberg. You notice where that plus was, we can do undo, redo, but also there is an inspector. An inspector will tell you how many words, headings, paragraphs, and blocks, and also the outline of your document. And this is super nice, especially if you have to have a post for a class site, for instance, that has a certain word count. You can easily now see it in WordPress for Western.